Good morning again, Tubaneros. Before we get started on the main event today, let me urge you, as a response to yesterday's Supreme Court decision regarding Wal-Mart, to boycott Wal-Mart for the indefinite future. If you can cause a drop in Wal-Mart's national revenues by at least 1%, that might send a message that wakes them up that the public does not approve of either their employee and business practices nor the ease with which they can bend the U.S. Supreme Court and the law in general to their private will. Let's cause a little less joy and gaiety and smug contempt in the corporate boardroom, which while they're busy gloating over yesterday's victory for them and loss for us. Okay, well, today we're going to talk about strategic arms control, beginning right here at home with our firearms industrial complex and its affiliated power lobbies, like, say, the National Rifle Association. And if I thought getting botted by the college kid libertarians was something, wait till the middle-aged pot guts with their illegally converted fully automatic AKs see this video. Anyway, first of all, let me say that I do own a firearm. One, and that I periodically renew my certification in its use. I'm not for complete banning of firearms by private persons, nor am I a complete pacifist. I do prefer nonviolence, as does any normally and morally sane living organism, but sometimes the use of force, even lethal force, may unfortunately be necessary to defend oneself or others in the world in which we live. And the right of citizens to bear arms in defense of society and their self-government is also vital. For instance, the military police coup in Chile on September 11, 1973 would not have gone so one-sidedly had the murdered Chilean president, Salvador Allende, followed through on his plan to arm and mobilize a citizens' militia in the factories and poor barrios. He did not, out of fear for civil war and bloodshed, hoping the military would respect his effort to keep the peace. This false trust put him in his grave at the hands of Chilean military murderers. I'm sure a number of General Pinochet's victims would have preferred war in the streets to go down fighting, rather than be tortured to death like dogs in the clutches of police cowards in secret murder chambers. If ever the right of the citizen in arms to forcibly resist so-called officers of the law and the state was justified, it was upon the military and police personnel of the Chilean Republic under General Augusto Pinochet. And who knows? Maybe just the threat of civil war would have stayed the hands of Pinochet, Kissinger, and Nixon from risking political violence. But just as surely, though, do governments have the right to defend themselves from social violence by mobilizing citizens in arms in self-defense. A good example here is Cuba. The United States hoped to foment a civil war and justify an occupation of Cuba in 1961 by arming a Contra army in the Escambray Mountains of central Cuba and linking them up with Brigade 2506 at the Bay of Pigs Landing. Thanks not only to the official Revolutionary Armed Forces, but to Cuba's mass-mobilized militia, the Escambray Contras were encircled and defeated before the landing at Huron Beach, where the militia also helped mop up the remnants of the invading force. Some may think that fomenting a civil war and a U.S. invasion would have been a good thing for Cuba, but most Cubans at the time seemed to strongly disagree. Faced with this alternative, they mobilized behind the revolutionary government in good Second Amendment style. So, let the record show that I am not intrinsically anti-gun or anti-defense. What I do oppose is the effort to militarize American society by selling the notion that every household must be turned into a miniature garrison or America is not free. For the survival of domestic civilization, there needs to be a rational series of strategic arms limitation talks within the body politic of the U.S. Instead, we're fed exaggerated horror stories from arms maker finance lobbies, just as during the Cold War, of terrorists and communists and criminals lurking out there in the shadows, of police and government that is not to be trusted any more than the UN, even branded like the UN as an enemy. And its former Nixon hawk G. Gordon Liddy, advocating citizens taking arm at jackbooted thugs in federal uniform after the David Koresh disaster in Waco, Texas. Interesting that one of the very men who justified the murder of Chilean citizens by real jackbooted thugs would wax so violent at officers in his own country, but I digress. No, I don't. And one of the reasons Anthony Weiner was targeted by Bloomberg the blogger was precisely his opposition to firearms proliferation and the arms industry's attempt to make weapons of retail destruction non-traceable by police. Common sense liberated from self-interest, tells one you can't have a civil society where each citizen exists in an armed camp, peering over his bunker hedge with his neighbor in the crosshairs, and also ready to go to war with the police. This mentality does not decrease crime, but encourages it. The hero of the gun lobby resistance in the 80s was the Sylvester Stallone character. As you might recall, so inspirational was Rambo that by itself he seemed to spawn the resurgence of inner-city gangbanging and automatic weapons flooding urban streets. The chic term was to do a Rambo on someone. This cultural icon did not, in practice, make America stand tall in freedom, but did spawn draconian laws stripping away more civil liberties so police, not the average citizen, could feel safe and secure on the streets. Just as the military-industrial contractors will not tell you that their war toys do nothing for real national security, so will the gun makers never admit that their flooding the arms market does absolutely nothing for public safety. The drug cartels that are destroying civil society in Mexico are armed by the free gun market in the U.S. The bloodbath in the former Yugoslavia was based on the same mentality of get your gun because they're coming for us. True only as a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the state and local garrisons emptied their arsenals and armed militias turned mafia warlord gangs into rulers of the streets. If you really want to see the U.S. become the equivalent of Mexico, or Bosnia, or Somalia, or Lebanon, or Albania, or Chechnya, where a normal, livable human society for oneself and family are rendered impossible, in a dream of the past, keep up the current policy of gun deregulation. Easy purchase, demonizing every attempt at holding manufacturers and their paid lobbyists accountable for the massacres let loose in the streets. Blaming criminals for tragedies in this regard as opposed to so-called responsible gun owners won't fly, because the very empowerment a loaded weapon gives brings the temptation to use it, just as the Pentagon itches to try its new and improved arsenals, and has been known to escalate conflicts to do just that. Self-regulation by owners will not work any more than self-regulation worked on Wall Street. What's needed is strong legal sanction against irresponsible purchase and use. Those who minimize the threat of arms proliferation, who would flood society with weapons of individual destruction, are largely of the same camp who are destroying the natural world for their short-term profit. Those who would make the planet unlivable as a civil human society are out to make it uninhabitable for life itself. And for what possible excuse? We do not live under the threat of a military coup, as in Chile, or the threat of foreign invasion, as in Cuba. In the U.S., we're in danger of doing it to ourselves for the profit of the arms manufacturers. If you're going to allow fully automatic weapons in the streets, why not hand grenades? Why not allow private persons to own fully operational tanks and howitzers? Because that's a silly extreme, but that's all relative. Raise the bar on automatic weapons, and the next goal seems less silly, less extreme, more sequentially logical. Knock upon the phone. Hello? Leonid Brezhnev. Hey, you just wanted to praise my new video? I know. Keep up the good work, convincing USians to lay down their arms to make their conquest all the more easier. But aren't you dead, and so isn't the USSR? So your support seems as silly as the gun lobby and exploiting your corpse. Do what? That's not what you're saying? What now? You want every American armed and dangerous, fighting his neighbor and the government, so you can watch it self-destruct from within and do your job for you. Why is that? Oh, payback for what the libertarians did to your country. Let there be 2-3 many Chechnyas in the US&A, all in the name of defending the Constitution. You and the Soviet Armed Forces and the Association of American Firearms Owners standing arm in arm, allies in the same great cause. Man, you were an evil dude, weren't you?